Greetings, members, one and all of the Salivation Nation. It is now official. Russia is moving towards a gold standard. Let's explore. Indeed, this just across the wires within the last couple of days here, sourced from Russia Today, which actually the website asked for my location. Of course, I said no, but nonetheless, they probably know already. But regardless, this is very interesting news, as originally reported by Russia Today here and shared within the precious metals community in the last few days on Twitter. I saw this from David Morgan. And so decided I'd look at the actual source here and look at this. Now, this does not mean that the Russia is in a gold standard now. It's just their intention. In fact, you heard I had covered this news, how they had pegged it to 5,000 rubles for a gram of gold, and then they went to a negotiated price. And so that kind of moves in a little bit away. So it's not just something that happens overnight, but it is indeed their intention, and likely because of what's going on with the ruble. Now, the ruble has gained some strength over the last couple of weeks in spite of sanctions and the like. But let's take a look at this directly from the source and what their intention here. Moscow is working on linking the price of the ruble to bullion and other commodities, according to Security Council of Russia, and what they say there. So it's not just bullion and gold, it's other commodities as well. And when you think about it, really, many nations should follow suit, but obviously they're kind of pegged into a corner, and there's not much choice they may have here, because what do they have left? Their gold, and their gold is being frozen as much as possible. Of course, they can only do so much, but trading gold, so therefore they can strengthen both by tying the ruble to gold. And obviously they want other oil and stuff to be traded in rubles. In fact, we heard in the news just recently how Russia is saying that, hey, we're not going to accept payment for oil except for in rubles for some Western countries, Western European countries. Nonetheless, Russian experts are working on a project to create a two-loop monetary and financial system in the country. Secretary of the Security Council, Nikolay Patrushev, said on Tuesday in an interview with Rossiyskaya Gazeta. He explained that the project involves the provision of the Russian currency with both gold and a range of goods representing a currency value. As a result, the ruble exchange rate would correspond to its real purchasing power parity, he said. To ensure the sovereignty of any national financial system, it is necessary that its means of payment have intrinsic value and price stability, and is not tied to the dollar, Patrushev said. Of course, the Russia, it's no secret, they've been, especially as of late, wanting to separate themselves from the dollar, but other nations, what are known as the BRICS nations, of course, that's an acronym, and Russia is the second letter. This has been no secret and been what they have been wanting to do for quite some time. Another important condition for Russian economic security is the restructuring of its economy based on modern technologies, he added. We're not against a market economy, but the West allows other countries to be its partner only when it is beneficial for it, Patrushev stressed, noting that Russia's development should be based on its internal potential. And in reality, as far as sovereignty of all nations, it would be a good idea to have more stable currencies. We are engaged in modern monetary theory. Here in the United States, the dollar's strength is higher than it's been in quite some time. In fact, a friend of mine has been emailing me, a viewer of the channel, who talked about the dollar index from a year ago to where it is now. It's over 100 now and was well under 100 just a year ago. And the precious metal prices are reflecting that because of dollar strength. In other words, as long as the dollar, which is losing value at a rate of about 1.2% per month these days, 8.5, 8.7% year over year, and the strength is way up, how does that make any sense? Well, it makes sense because we are the cleanest shirt in a pile of dirty shirts in the laundry pile. In other words, we're still dirty. Our shirt is dirty, but it is cleaner than the other shirts in the laundry pile. And so the ruble, and of course Russia with its economy being the way it is, they've kind of are backing themselves in a corner, although they've been preparing for this for quite a while. There is some planning that went into this, and it's been documented on this channel and others, because they kind of knew this was coming, because probably they had planned for this and for this invasion probably for at least a year, if not more. But anyways, on March the 25th, the Bank of Russia announced a fixed price for buying gold with rubles. It set a price of 5,000 rubles, which was $59 for a gram of gold. Of course, they abandoned that just weeks later, and now they went to a negotiated price, which moves them further away. The Secretary of Treasury also stressed that Washington was trying to solve its problems at the expense of the rest of the world, thereby creating a human-induced global crisis, and its European allies would be the first to suffer from those actions, Patrushev said. Now, when you think about it, that's obviously a bit of hubris because, again, Russia's economy is the size of Italy's, and though they have some pull with some of their energy resources, oil, the answer to that is, well, we drill domestically here, and we can export from the United States to our Western allies, because so far they're still doing business with Russia and enriching Russia, and now Russia has the upper hand, saying that you're only going to pay for your oil in rubles. While the White House is discussing a possible default by Russia, the situation is such that it's time for them to declare their own default, Patrushev said, pointing out that the U.S. External debt has exceeded $30 trillion, and you cannot argue with that. It is very true. And, how long can this continue? And our debt to GDP ratio is higher than it's been since World War II. And you remember I did a video talking about the world debt and how to protect yourself from world debt, and that is with gold for sure. And this being kind of a timely video, let's look at where the prices for the precious metals closed over the weekend here. And we can see that gold is trying to recapture some of its losses, or recoup from some of its losses, but is still under $1,900 an ounce. Silver has dropped, actually, to below $23 an ounce here. And platinum and palladium are now starting to rise again. And again, I think a lot of that is due to the volatility of the markets, and maybe even what is occurring with what is already in flow for the PGMs in the marketplace, the LPPA, as I reported, or the LPPE, the London Platinum and Palladium Exchange, or Association, so I think it is LPPA, has stopped taking in, importing any platinum or palladium from Russia. And so, but whatever was already in the pipeline is going through. It's just they had stopped it since then. So there's enough going through that sooner or later we're probably going to see these metals be pretty volatile and rise up. Although, again, platinum is undervalued, and I believe compared to where it was a year ago, around this time it was much more, over $1,100, and now it's under $1,000 comfortably. But again, looking at gold and other commodities as what Russia is looking towards here, I believe this was kind of planned out, and this is their intention. Now, this is their intention, and as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, it does not mean that it will happen, or at least anytime soon. And considering what's going on, their economy really is weak, and it was weak even before. But one thing you will say about Russia is their debt to GDP ratio is not even on the charts compared to most of the world. That is one thing that will give them. Obviously, I'm against the action that is occurring, the invasion of Ukraine, but they have been smart in some ways with their debt. So this last sentence here, what Patricia said about the U.S. external debt exceeding $30 trillion, that is a drop the mic moment for the United States. And we have been hubris in our dealing with debt. Now, one other thing, too, with inflation being what it is and how fast it's occurring, that $30 trillion is not as bad as $28 trillion was a year or so ago. Think about that for a moment. Let that sink in. That is an interesting concept here, that those dollars are worth less now than they were a year ago. And if the debt was 29 trillion dollars, then the 30 trillion is not as bad as it was because the dollars are worth less. It's ironic how that works, but that is the case here, and I believe that is part of what's happening. Why they're maybe not so concerned on a global scale or for our national scale here, because it means that we're not as in debt as we once were in terms of the value of the dollars, at the expense of you and me, who have fixed incomes or who are getting pay increases that don't nearly match the level of inflation. In other words, let's say that you get a raise this year of 5%. Normally that would seem like a pretty good bump. That's actually a pay cut, because inflation, the official numbers, are well over 8.5% year over year. So you're losing out. Your spending power, and it's a tax. It's essentially a tax. So there you go. Fascinating indeed. So interesting news. We'll see how it plays out. I think it's going to be quite some time before we see this thing take into effect. But it's something they have been planning here, and we'll see where it goes. So fascinating indeed, and wonderful to hear gold being in the news again. At least some countries are looking at it as a potential possibility. And in some ways, even though this is going to take a while and they're under the gun and under pressure to do it, they really don't have many other options. I think that we can learn from Russia in this case, or should learn from Russia, or at least take into account what Ted Cruz said during the 2016 presidential election, being one of the only candidates to seriously talk about monetary policy. Of all of those candidates, Ted Cruz was the only one. He says there should be a rules-based monetary system, with gold potentially being a part of that. And this is the first thing where they're actually purposely, intentionally moving in that direction. So very interesting indeed. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. I hope you found this video insightful. I would like to extend a multitude of gratitude to you all for taking the time to watch, and to encourage you to please rate, share, comment, and subscribe.